Need your slide rule for that one.
Yeah, no.
He's not wrong.
Who was that? Because he's right.
That's Phil Bennett.
Phil Bennett, yeah. No,
Not sure what Phil Bennett that is. Is it that Phil Bennett?
I don't know.
I doubt it.
That is the irony, but it is 5 minutes that they wouldn't have had to worry about if they'd have done it. I mean, it's still going to be worth at least 3.5 minutes. I mean, the reason that these penalties are all a time plus 32 seconds is that the organisers judge that it will take 32 seconds to drive down the pit lane. Yeah. So automatically your stop is 32 seconds. And that's why they just tag it on to an existing
5-minute penalty.
Is why they tag it onto an existing pit stop rather than doing it as a special pit stop. Because then if you do it in a special pit stop, you'd have the extra time of driving down the pit lane. So because on a normal pit stop, you don't have that extra time. That's why they add it on that way. Yeah,
and if they didn't, they'd give you a 4-minute 28 penalty to allow for the drive-through. Yes, right. Exactly right. 911 up behind the Falcon BMW. Do you know, just watching the BMW as it bounces over all the crests in Tiergarten, you can sort of see potentially why quite a lot of them have headed off into the scenery. It doesn't look as composed as the Porsche, and it just looks like it's quite a lot harder work. This is the number 33 car. He's in 10th place. He's already a lap down, and the Porsche dives through to the inside. The race leader goes through, and so for the moment the BMW goes a second lap down, but only to 911. So when 911 serves its penalty, depending on the pace of the BMW, it might come back a lap.
It will get onto the lead.
No, it's already one down.
Sorry, yes, it will get on. It will get back on to being a lap behind, which will be little consolation, I suspect, against Klingman and the rest of the Falcon crew.
Well, and for anybody at BMW Motorsport, it's been
the only BMW, in the top 20 in 10th place. So, and the other Falcon car, the 44 Porsche, is down in 18th place. So, unusually, the BMW, well, it's not actually that unusual because the Falcon BMW often does go quicker than the Falcon Porsche, but the Falcon BMW then at the moment the better of the two Falcon tyres car, but at least a team that has both of its cars still running.
Yes, indeed. Kelvin van der Linde, for it is he at the wheel of the 29 Audi, taking no prisoners now. If he did before, the onboard, if you can get a feed of that somewhere, you're going to watch it from behind the sofa or between your fingers, because there are a lot of near misses still out on this circuit. And that was a very close call going around a slower car.
Shout out to Alan Chisholm, who's been with us pretty much all of the way, which is a bad idea. He's the father of my grandkids, and he's got a house of chaos with a 7-year-old and 2 4-year-olds. However, he's sleep deprived more than ever. As he couldn't tear himself away.
More sleep deprived than them on a Sunday
Alan
morning.
Chiz, still with us.
Put the
enjoying every moment.
Leave it until Tuesday before you go back, Joe.
Very good. We've been watching Kelvin van der Linde from the onboard camera in the Audi. Now he's got what looks like it's single lap qualifying as he comes down, dotting a her, because there's nobody behind him and there's nobody in front. The track is emptying.
Well,
can we tell how many actual runners we've got left?
I'll need notice of that question, but if you want to give me notice and leave me in
peace for an hour.
Well, it won't take me that long, but it will take us a little while. I mean, I think what is happening is that, yes, the traffic is getting less, but those cars further down the field, you've noticed this, Martin, when you've been doing the hourly updates, is there's quite big gaps between them. So they're not pushing as hard, so they're forming into these little clumps. And so it's great because you get a lap where you get 3/4 of the way around, no traffic at all, this is going really well, and then you get a whole pile of 6 cars all going sort of touring around fairly slowly, not slowly, but not pushing to the absolute limit.
This is Paul's famously espoused theory of nighttime magnetism between racing cars.
Nighttime clumping.
They clump together, exactly.
And it happens towards the end of the race as well.
Because to make a move, you have to often force it, and you're in a position where you want to finish, so you don't want to force it. So losing a second or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 a lap is better than going off.
It's exactly when you're driving to Cornwall in the summer and you think, at the beginning of the race, at the beginning of your journey,
Yes.
you're going to overtake everything you possibly can.
Yeah.
And as you get closer and closer to your destination, you think, oh, there's just another caravan ahead of me. And you just sit behind the other caravans.
Plus, there's Popmaster, and you want to get a good score on that. So, and you've been going since 4 in the morning, and the kids are waking up, and it's almost time for a wee. All sorts of pressure. Joe.
Phil Bennett's claiming to be the Phil Bennett.
Well, he is the Phil Bennett.
It's
That's why
me.
it says Phil Bennett.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's me. I'm planning a comeback. It's been awesome. It's just the sort of styling of Phil Bennett out there,
planning
isn't
a
it?
comeback. Well, do you know?
Look forward to seeing you, Phil, if you do.
But the thing, the thing
Wish
is
you
with
would.
this race is you don't have to be a 23-year-old factory driver who's basically invisible if you turn sideways. You're so fit. You can be like Wayne Moore. You can do it because, damn it, I want to do it. You know, the guys in the Ginetta, which is still going, one Ginetta in the entire race.
Colin
it is still
White.
going. And they're doing it because they want to.
Colin White, he's still fast
Yeah.
as any 20-year-old.
Or in his case, 20-plus-year-old.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
I reckon that we have lost 46 out of the 154 that started, which means we've got 108 still circulating.
That's a decent attrition rate. That's almost a third.
Well, funnily enough, somebody asked during a question at some point, and I forget who was with us, but I couldn't find a race that has had less than 100 finishers. And I know we've had more than 200 starters on occasions, but I could never find one that's had less than 100 finishers. So we're kind of on a par, but we still do have at least 2.5 hours to go. So, but we will get towards the end of the race lots of weekend warriors or walking wounded coming out onto the circuit.
There's a car driving around with the bonnet up, covering its windscreen. Would anybody like to guess what badge it's got on the nose?
It'll be a blue and white.
It will be a blue and white Munich Roundel. It's the number 74 BMW M4 GT4. Rudy Adams is a danger to everybody and especially to himself because he was there at Tiergarten. He literally could see nothing. He was zigzagging between grass and grass across the track at one of the fastest parts of the circuit. And he's going to drive into the pit wall. He drives straight into the end of the pit wall because he couldn't see where he was going. And now the car is jammed in the barriers that protect the end of the pit wall. And he is blocking the pit entry.
I saw Hindhoff drive into a skip like that once because he was
Roundabout?
blinded
What
and he
roundabout?
literally drove into the skip just like that.
Pit lane, what pit
Can you remember
lane?
when you did that, Hindhoff? It's easy done. It's easily done, isn't it, mate?
Oh, Hindhoff, mum.
Especially when you can't see.
Bonnet up, and the team are just standing there, as you would, with your hand on your head, half going, what have you done? And the other half now can't stop themselves laughing in their fatigue.
Yeah, for
he's jammed in.
the benefit of people who didn't see the pictures that we weren't describing terribly well.
Oh, well, I thought I was.
Worked great on radio, that, Paul.
Clearly we were describing that the bonnet was up, but in his endeavours, because there was a Porsche earlier on that had its bonnet up,
Yeah.
and I think the Porsche, actually, John Band actually have an opinion on this. The Porsche's bonnet, when it flips up, gives you much more visibility underneath it if you just slide down the belt. The BMW bonnet, when it flips up, didn't give you any visibility at all. Yeah, had its comic value certainly, but bearing in mind what the driver was trying to do and the amount of visibility that he didn't have, it's easy to see somebody with blindfold on making a fool of himself.
It's really, really lucky that the track behind him was very empty. If any of our front runners had been coming past or coming up behind him, then they would have been a really massive shunt because he literally had no idea where he was. He was veering literally from grass. He'd hit the grass on one side, steer, hit the grass on the, steer, no, I'm off again. It was like ping, 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 ping.
We've almost got, between the three of us, we've almost got 100 years of motorsport experience of watching and being there and participating, what have you. I have never seen that before.
I've never seen the end of the pit wall hit so
like
slowly.
That. Yes.
It was the inevitability of it was just, I just knew he was going to hit it. He couldn't not.
There was a Le Mans 24 hours in the early 2000s when the bonnet flipped up on a Porsche in the GT class on the last couple of laps of the race, and the driver couldn't afford to come into the pits because he was battling for GT2 honours, and I think it was a Team Taisan Porsche. It was black and yellow.
Right.
and John remembers it, but I have a picture of it in my head. And he had to go around and do a full lap, and it was an equally terrifying spectacle to watch, but he didn't do then something which was, as I say, it had its comedic aspect of driving to the end of the pit wall.
I don't doubt that the poor driver will be, by the time he gets home, not only will his phone have blown up from the number of tweets and texts, but also it'll be millions of hits on YouTube.
There's one concern I have, because he may well have loosened his belts in trying to see out of the window. What you don't want to be doing, even at 40 kilometres an hour or whatever he's doing, is hitting anything at that speed.
But the good news is that he selected reverse and was wheel spinning, trying to back the car off. So he wouldn't appear to be that badly hurt.
It's quite possible he didn't loosen his belts, which would have been the most sensible thing to do in those circumstances.
Yeah. Or maybe stop and ask the marshals to put the bonnet down. But again, you know, he was just trying to save time. They've attached a tow rope to the back of the BMW, and another BMW, which appears not to have crashed into anything yet because it's a rescue vehicle, is trying to pull it off the barriers. 3 marshals are trying to lever it off the barriers, but it is sort of submarined. It looks like where the top of the slam panel is on the bonnet, that's submarined underneath a rail of, I won't say Armco, metal retaining barrier. And
it's wedged under there, isn't it?
It's properly wedged.
Whilst we wait to see them get the acetylene bottles down there to cut that barrier off, perhaps the reason why we saw such a draconian penalty given to the 911, Graham Goodwin mentions that
it's only a 5-minute penalty.
The car was clocked at 172 k's in a 120 kilometre zone.
Is that a minute per 10 k's over? I remember being in a driver's briefing, not last year, but a couple of years ago, and there is a sliding scale. If you're 10 k's over, it's a minute, and so maybe it is a minute per 10 k's over.
There is one of the things about regulations is it's not just having what's allowed, it has to have a list of penalties for what happens when you do something that's disallowed, and there is a penalty table in the regulations. However, the Michael Christensen car has another 4 laps to do until its next pit stop. Kelvin van der Linde.
Is that Bastian? No. Yes, that's Bastian in the number 6 Mercedes. There is just the roofline available for view. He's gone off, and he's gone off fast.
Is that at Tiergarten?
The
coming
race that
into
keeps
the
on
yellow
giving.
flag zone?
Oh no! Well,
Freckens the ice curve. That's towards Tiergarten,
yes.
isn't it?
Okay.
Well, that's where the code 60 is at Tiergarten. But he's followed off a number of other cars, judging by the debris field between our camera view and where the car has come to rest. And it looks like he's looped around and backed it into the barriers.
Bear in mind that there is a lot of debris around the circuit after 21 and a half hours of racing, and that's been the cause possibly of some of our punctures.
More than one set of tyre marks going off there as well. Some of them will be his, and it is Flansgarden. He turns in underneath the camera and doesn't make it out on the exit. Brunchen.
It's Brunchen
too.
that
just before the brow.
Brunchen
the right-hander he doesn't make. He never gets to the left-hander. That's going a long way. That he's losing that from the moment he disappears under the camera, so into the compression.
He's done, isn't he? He's out of the car. I reckon that's going to be a pretty heavily damaged Mercedes.
Well, even if it went in and hit the barriers with the rear, he's a long way from home. They're going to lose 10, 15, 20 minutes to get back. No wonder he's out of the car cursing his luck.
Intervention vehicles there quickly.
Only his first flying lap. He'd done a out lap out of the pits, and then on his flying lap, that happened to Nico Bastian, freshly into the car. That's one reason perhaps for keeping the same driver in the car for longer periods of time, which Black Falcon, to be fair, had been doing. Gabriele Piani having done a double stint, or 2.5 stint, didn't we? We said. So
yes.
Marcel Fessler, the man most likely to inherit from that, but Marcel Fessler would be into the pits at the end of the lap that he's currently on.
Having extricated the 74 BMW from the end of the barrier, he then continued down into the pit lane with the bonnet still up, obscuring his vision. He's been stopped, and now we've taped that bonnet down.
It's just so he can drive down the pit lane without running anybody down. Yes. The number 74 BMW, Rudy Adams, his social network is going to be in utter meltdown, and there will be millions of hits of that video before he gets out of the car. Meanwhile, further up the field, Nico Bastian. The real reason Nico Bastian is frustrated is not only because he's only just starting a stint.